Some legends don't raise their voices, they just stop the room. Arnold Schwarzenegger wasn't known for walking off stages, but on one sharp-edged night in Los Angeles, under the hot lights of Jimmy Kimmel's studio, something changed. It started with a prop, and ended with a silence that spoke louder than any applause. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from, and if this kind of story speaks to you, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Iron Giant turned global statesman, walks into the Jimmy Kimmel Live studio with the quiet certainty of a man who's seen it all and outlived half of it. The room buzzes with pre-show adrenaline. Lights burn a little too bright, the air conditioner hums louder than usual, and everyone's moving like they know something big is about to happen but haven't figured out what. He's not here for laughs. He's here to talk about his new documentary, a raw, urgent call about climate, citizenship, and responsibility. But the stage smells more like setup than sincerity. Backstage, Arnold sips a black coffee from a plain paper cup. No sugar, no cream, just heat and grit, like the man himself. In one hand, he holds the show's revised rundown. His eyes scan it, then stop. A crease forms between his brow. He doesn't say anything, but Alina sees it. Alina, his longtime assistant, doesn't wear heels or smiles for convenience. She's ex-military. Her eyes catch something across the room, a prop cart being wheeled in, partially covered with a tarp. She moves closer. Peeking out from the fabric, a silver mechanical arm, and beside it, a foam muscle suit with Terminator 2.0 scrawled on the tag. She turns to the stage manager, jaw clenched. "Take it back," she says, no question in her voice. The man shrugs, trying to look confused. "It's just a quick gag, nothing serious, for the opening bit." Elena steps closer, low and cold. "Don't turn him into a meme." The manager looks past her, searching for someone else to deal with this. She doesn't budge. The prop cart stays in place. Across the hall, Jimmy Kimmel walks in, high-fiving a production intern, grinning wide. But when he spots Arnold waiting in the green room, his smile stutters for half a second. He recovers, waves, says, "Hey, big guy," then keeps walking. No eye contact, no small talk, just motion and distance. Arnold watches him go, then glances back at the prop cart. A flicker in his expression, like he's already pieced it together, like he's seen this game before and knows how it ends. Inside the control room, producers huddle around monitors. Someone whispers, "Ratings could spike if he plays along." Someone else says, "Just push him a little, get the moment." No one questions if they should, only if they can get away with it. The audience outside is being seated. A warm-up comic yells something about free t-shirts and Instagram reels. Laughter echoes through the hall, but inside, beneath the neon polish and practiced smiles, something's off. There's tension in the wiring, like the lights are too hot, like the ground is humming. Arnold sets down his coffee. He doesn't say a word, just stares at the curtain ahead, and waits. 5 minutes to showtime. The countdown clock flashes red inside the control room. Technicians check camera angles, lights are tested and retested. The stage glows under the weight of too much polish. The audience, just beyond the curtain, laughs on cue as the warm-up comic tosses jokes like candy. Inside, though, the real energy isn't laughter, it's calculation. In the corner, the lead producer leans over the rundown with a pen. He circles segment 3, then, almost casually, writes one word in the margin, "prop." Another voice chimes in behind him. "This is the moment. Give the internet something to eat." A junior staffer nods and hands Jimmy a new cue card. Jimmy reads it, then glances toward the prop cart backstage. His eyes flick to the silver robotic arm, the foam muscle chest plate folded beside it, and a smirk tugs at the corner of his mouth. But it fades just as fast. He sighs, handing the card back. "You really want to do this?" The producer shrugs, tapping the card. "We're not asking him to dance, just one moment." Big guy holds the arm, crowd laughs. It trends by morning. That's the job. Jimmy looks out at the audience. He knows how this works. Manufactured magic, viral gold wrapped in applause, but his eyes don't stay on the crowd for long. They drift toward the hallway where Arnold is waiting. "He's not the guy to play games," Jimmy says, low, almost to himself. The producer laughs. Then why come on a talk show? Jimmy doesn't answer, just rubs his face like a man bracing for impact. Backstage, Elena is already moving. She sees the new placement of the prop cart, now wheeled slightly closer to the curtain. She sees the assistant holding the cue card with Arnold's name at the top. She sees the lights on the stage, hotter now, more theatrical. Someone is setting a scene, a trap built out of timing and expectation. She steps directly into the path of the assistant. "What's that?" she asks, motioning to the card. The assistant hesitates, "Just updated notes." Elena takes it, reads, then looks up. Her voice is flat, almost calm. "This wasn't in the plan." The assistant fidgets. "It's harmless." Elena's face doesn't change. She walks past him, straight to the producer, her boots hitting the floor harder with each step. She doesn't yell. She doesn't need to. "We agreed," she says. "No bits, no gags. He's here to talk about the film." The producer waves her off. "Relax, he's a pro, he'll handle it." Elena leans in. "He's not here to handle your ratings." The producer avoids her eyes, pretends to check his headset. He says nothing. Jimmy appears beside them, late to the standoff. He catches Elena's stare and raises his hands like a man caught in the middle. "Look," he says, soft, "it's just a bit. If he's not into it, we'll skip it." Elena doesn't blink. Don't give him the chance to refuse. Just don't put it out there. Jimmy exhales, annoyed now. "If he's really that serious," he says, almost laughing, "then maybe he shouldn't be here at all." She doesn't flinch. "Maybe not." For a second, no one moves. Then Jimmy shakes his head, voice flat. "Fine, but if he shuts it down, that's on him." He turns and walks toward the stage. Elena stands there, jaw set. She knows that look. She's seen it in other shows, other rooms, when people decide it's easier to gamble with someone's dignity than to respect their boundary. They don't know, or maybe they don't care. Back in 1990, Arnold turned down a sitcom deal because the pilot wanted him in a towel, flexing and grunting for laughs. Said it cheapened everything he built. That script's still in a drawer somewhere, never shot, never aired. The producers tonight weren't there for that, but Elena was, and she sees the same mistake being made again. She walks back toward the wings, her eyes locked on the curtain. Behind it, the lights are up. The music starts. The crowd begins to cheer, and Arnold steps forward. The lights blaze. The band kicks in with a heavy brass riff. The audience roars. Jimmy Kimmel raises his hands to the crowd and grins like he's riding a wave he built himself. "Ladies and gentlemen," he says, voice bouncing with rehearsed excitement. He's been a bodybuilder, a blockbuster icon, a governor, and probably the only man alive who could stare down a T-1000 and Congress in the same week. Give it up for the one, the only Arnold Schwarzenegger. The applause hits like thunder. The band swells. Then Arnold steps out. He doesn't stride. He moves with weight, like each step is considered. The suit is dark, clean cut. No flash, no flare, just presence. He raises one hand to acknowledge the crowd, then walks toward Jimmy with the calm of someone walking into a room he already knows the shape of. They shake hands. It's brief, firm. Arnold's face doesn't break into the full talk show grin. He sits, upright, alert. Jimmy leans back in his chair, soaking in the cheers. Arnold waits for them to die down. He doesn't fidget, doesn't scan the crowd, just watches Jimmy. So Jimmy starts, the grin still hanging on his face. "You've got a new project. Not about killer robots this time, though. You're saving the planet now." Arnold nods. "A documentary," he says, voice low and even. "About climate justice, sustainability, how small actions can change systems if you're willing to start." Jimmy nods like he's listening, but the glint in his eye says he's looking for the next punchline. "That's incredible," he says. "So from pumping iron to planting trees, do the trees get scared when you show up?" The crowd laughs, a few chuckles loud, like they're not sure if that's funny or just familiar. Jimmy pushes ahead. "Seriously, though, when did the Terminator decide to go green?" Arnold's eyes narrow just slightly. Then he answers. "I was always a machine," he says, "but now I fight something real, not humans, apathy." The studio goes quieter than expected. A few claps. Someone murmurs, "That was deep," under their breath. Jimmy chuckles, but it's thinner now. Okay," he says, flipping his card. Let's talk about the film. You've got interviews with climate scientists, global leaders. You even got that footage of a glacier collapse, right? Arnold nods. Yes, but the core of the film isn't footage. It's willpower, what people choose when no one's watching. Jimmy nods again, but he's scanning the crowd now. He feels the rhythm dip. The laughs haven't landed like they should, the room's shifting under him. He tries again. Look, I think it's great, but come on, tell me the truth. Is there even one scene where you flex at a wind turbine? Another laugh, bigger this time. The audience wants to believe it's all still fun. That the old Arnold, the caricature, the myth, will crack through and give them a line they can meme by morning. But Arnold doesn't smile. He leans forward just a bit, his eyes locked. You know, he says slowly, there's power in being taken seriously, but only if you don't give people a reason to laugh at the wrong things. The laughter dies mid-breath. Jimmy leans back, adjusting the mic on his desk like it's suddenly too loud. There's a pause, not long, just enough to notice. Jimmy clears his throat. Right, he says. Well, you've clearly evolved. Arnold doesn't reply. He just sits there, still poised. Jimmy smiles, but the edge is duller now. He flips his next card with a bit more force than needed. The audience shifts in their seats. No one says it, but everyone feels it. The Terminator isn't here tonight. Arnold is, and he's not here to play. Jimmy taps the corner of his next cue card. The edge of his smile twitches like it's starting to cramp. He's feeling it now, the silence between the laughs, the drag in the crowd's rhythm. He's lost the bounce. The room's gotten heavier, and Arnold isn't playing his game. So he shifts, looks down, pulls something from beneath the desk. The audience leans forward, sensing movement. The band doesn't play, but their instruments twitch slightly, like they're waiting for a cue. Jimmy holds it up. A silver prop hand, plastic, oversized, molded to mimic the hydraulic grip of the original Terminator model. The fingers clunk together slightly as he lifts it, joints loose from years in a storage bin somewhere. He spins it once for the camera and grins. All right, Jimmy says, his voice a little louder than before, the grin stretched wide. We can't let the fans down completely. Just one classic moment for old time's sake. He turns to Arnold, still holding the hand out like an offering. One quick selfie, Terminator style, he says, for the internet. The audience laughs, half nervously, half automatically. Someone whistles, a few claps echo across the studio. Arnold doesn't move, his face doesn't change, his body stays still, but something shifts in the air around him. Not like a man frozen, but like one calculating, measuring every molecule of the moment. His eyes lock on the prop. Jimmy waits, smile wobbling now, eyes flicking toward the camera crew, looking for backup. He chuckles, trying to fill the pause with noise. But there's no need, because Arnold finally speaks. His voice is soft, unraised. No anger, no bark, just steel. Put that away. 3 words, no flourish, no smile. The studio goes silent. Not the kind of silence that waits for a punchline, not the kind that expects recovery, the kind that settles deep like a fog, heavy, still. Jimmy blinks. He laughs again, but it's thinner now, almost involuntary. He lowers the hand slightly, like it's suddenly heavier than expected. Come on, just for the fans, he says, his voice dipping fast, just a little fun. Arnold doesn't repeat himself. He doesn't have to. He keeps his eyes on the prop, his posture unchanging. The audience can feel it. This isn't awkward anymore. It's a line being drawn, right here, on live television. Backstage, Elena stiffens in the shadows, her earpiece crackling faintly with confused chatter from the control booth. Her hands close into fists. She doesn't look at the monitors. She already knows what's happening. Jimmy shifts again in his seat, clears his throat, tries to smile at the crowd. Okay, he says, voice strained, no props tonight. He sets the hand down on the desk, too quickly, too loud. The plastic clunk echoes across the stage like a dropped weapon. No one laughs. Arnold finally moves. He leans in just slightly and looks at Jimmy with the calm of someone who's not surprised, not offended, just disappointed. His voice doesn't rise, but it cuts. You invited me here to talk about something that matters. You chose instead to turn me into a punchline. The crowd stirs, a few murmurs, 1 or 2 claps that die before they begin. A ripple of tension through the seats. Jimmy opens his mouth, then closes it. His eyes dart to the producer in the wings, who's frozen, headset askew, caught between the desire to cut to commercial and the fear of missing a moment that might go viral. Arnold leans back. His hands rest on his knees. His breathing is steady. Jimmy laughs again, but it's a broken sound. I mean, it's just TV, right? Arnold doesn't answer. The audience doesn't cheer. In the silence, you can hear it, that rarest of things in a studio built for laughter. Respect, or maybe reckoning. And Jimmy Kimmel, king of late-night charm, suddenly looks very small beneath the lights. He pushes the prop hand further back on the desk, like maybe distance will help. It doesn't. The camera stays on Arnold, not moving, not smiling, just watching, and in that stare you can feel it, the shift. This is no longer Jimmy's show. It never was. Jimmy shifts in his seat, clearing his throat like he's swallowing the silence. The studio is still. The crowd, unsure whether to laugh or applaud, lingers in that awkward limbo where even breathing feels impolite. He tries again, lighter this time, reaching for the rope of routine. Okay, he says, forcing a smile. No props, no problem. Let's talk about the film. What inspired it, was it? But Arnold cuts in, not loud, not rude. Just firm. There was a time, he says, his voice low and slow, when three of us shared a single room in a crumbling apartment in Venice Beach. No hot water, no air conditioning, just concrete, sweat, and hope. The room goes quiet again, but this time something shifts in the silence. No longer tension, curiosity, respect. The kind of stillness that leans forward. Arnold continues. We worked construction, lifting bricks, mixing cement. I carried 50-pound bags of mortar up 6 flights of stairs because the elevator didn't work. No one called me a legend then. They didn't even call me Arnold. Just the big guy who barely speaks English. Jimmy leans back slowly. The cue cards in his hand lower a little. The first English phrase I ever understood fully, Arnold says, eyes fixed on the audience now, was "You're not good enough." He lets that sit, just long enough to sting. I heard it from casting agents, from gym owners, from real estate brokers. They looked at my name, my accent, my body, and decided I was a punchline before I ever said a word. No one in the crowd moves. Even the camera operators slow down, zooming quietly. But I kept showing up, Arnold says, not to prove them wrong, but because I had something bigger to build than muscles. I had a future in my head they couldn't see. A life I hadn't lived yet, but one I knew was waiting. Jimmy's smile fades completely. He looks at Arnold, then at the audience, then back. For once, he has no joke. You know what people get wrong about movies like The Terminator? Arnold asks, turning slightly toward Jimmy but still projecting outward. They think it's about being unstoppable, indestructible, but it's not. He pauses, then. It's about deciding not to quit, even when no one believes you're real. A woman in the front row dabs at her eyes with a tissue. A man beside her nods slowly. No one's filming, not anymore. Phones have dropped to laps. People are listening. Arnold gestures to the lights, the stage, the setup. You build this whole world around laughs and applause, he says. But the truth is, when you stop being funny, when you stop entertaining, what's left? He lets the question hang in the air. When I was 15, he says, I told my father I'd be the strongest man in the world. He laughed, said dreams were for other people, that I should find a trade. I didn't argue. I packed my bag and left Austria. The crowd is still as stone. Even the producers behind the glass are frozen. America didn't welcome me with red carpets. It handed me a mop and a list of toilets to clean. But I said thank you. I showed up early, stayed late, learned, failed, tried again. He leans forward, elbows on his knees now. You see this suit, he says, tugging slightly at his jacket. These lights, this audience, they're not rewards, they're reminders. Of what it costs. Of how far you have to go when the world tells you to stay in your place. He glances toward Jimmy, whose eyes are now downcast. I came here to talk about a film, Arnold says, but maybe this is more important. He turns back to the audience. I've played machines, I've played gods, I've played soldiers, but I am not a character. I am a man who built something real from nothing. He pauses, letting the truth settle. And people don't buy movie tickets to see biceps. They buy them because they want to believe in resilience, in transformation, in the impossible becoming possible. Now the applause starts, not loud, not wild, but steady, respectful. Earned. Jimmy finally looks up, face unreadable. Wow, he says quietly, I didn't know. Arnold doesn't nod, doesn't smile. You didn't ask. And with that, he leans back in his seat, calm again. But the room is different now. It's no longer a stage. It's a lesson. Jimmy shifts again in his seat, but this time it's not to find comfort. It's to regain control. The applause from Arnold's last line is still fading, but Jimmy hears something else rising beneath it, momentum. And it's not his. He clears his throat, louder than necessary, tapping his pen on the desk like a drumline for a comeback. Okay, he says, forcing a chuckle, I think we've all just taken a little unexpected field trip into philosophy class. But hey, this is a talk show. Let's not forget the keyword here is show. A few laughs, scattered, uneasy. Like people laughing because they feel they should. Arnold doesn't respond. He sits there, eyes fixed, breathing slow. The room doesn't return to normal because the room has changed. Jimmy leans in, his voice sharper now. I mean, come on. People don't tune in for lectures. They want to laugh. They want fun. They don't want to be told how to feel or what they've done wrong. The air stiffens. That word, wrong, lands harder than he expects. Arnold turns to him slowly. I didn't say anyone was wrong, he says, voice deep but calm. I said we forget. We get distracted. We start confusing noise for meaning. Jimmy throws up his hands, the frustration breaking through. This is late night, Arnold. Not a documentary festival. You came on my stage. Arnold rises, not fast, not dramatic, just steady, and suddenly the set feels smaller. Jimmy's desk feels lower. The air around Arnold seems to thicken. I came, Arnold says, because I believed you had something worth sharing. A platform, a voice. He steps toward the edge of the stage, looking out at the audience. But if all that voice does is echo back applause, then what is it? Now the crowd begins to split. One section breaks into claps, a few even standing. Another remains seated, arms crossed, unsure whether they're watching a moment or a meltdown. A voice yells, let him speak. Another shouts back, this isn't therapy. Jimmy stands now too, trying to match the presence in front of him. You don't get to hijack the show, he says, his voice raised. Arnold turns slowly. I didn't hijack anything, he says. I answered your question, the only way I know how. His voice isn't loud, it doesn't have to be, it cuts clean because it doesn't try. I'm not here to teach, I'm here to remind people we still have a heart, a conscience. That maybe we can talk without a punchline, chasing every sentence. Behind the cameras, producers are frozen, someone's whispering into a headset, someone else just says, let it roll. The director nods, ratings are climbing. Jimmy looks around, scanning for lifelines, but the crowd isn't his anymore. It's splintering, some are filming, some are nodding, some are whispering with discomfort. This isn't what people want, Jimmy says, and now his voice shakes, not with fear, but with disbelief that he's lost his own stage. Arnold steps forward, closing the space between them by one step, not threatening, but intentional. No, he says, this is what people need, maybe not every night, maybe not for every guest. But just once in a while, someone has to say what matters. He turns to the audience again. You wake up every morning being sold 1,000 lies, that you're not enough, that more stuff will make you happy. That if you're not laughing, you're failing. But laughter isn't the same as joy, and silence isn't weakness. Someone claps, then another, then half the room is rising, but so is the other half in protest, in resistance. Voices clash. The studio buzzes with something raw and real. Elena watches from the wings, arms crossed. Her eyes never leave Arnold. Jimmy, still standing, steps forward too. You're not better than this show, he says. You don't get to come here and make it your soapbox. Arnold doesn't flinch. I'm not better, he says, but I am honest. That hits square in the center. Jimmy opens his mouth, then closes it. He glances off stage. His team offers no help. Arnold walks back to his chair, doesn't sit, just looks out one last time. "You invited a man," he says, "not a machine. And men speak truth, even when it doesn't trend." The studio holds its breath. The lights burn bright. The cameras catch every flicker. The crowd is a battlefield of cheers and boos. Jimmy is silent. And Arnold, still standing, has never seemed taller, not because of height, but because he refused to shrink. The studio is chaos wrapped in silence, the kind that doesn't come from sound, but from impact. No one moves. Not the audience, not the crew, not even Jimmy, who stands frozen beside his desk, mouth slightly open like he wants to speak, but has forgotten how. The cameras are still rolling. The control room is split, half shouting to cut, half begging to let it play out. The director doesn't blink. Ratings are through the roof. Arnold stands center stage, calm as a statue. The noise around him doesn't touch him. The shouts, the claps, the murmurs all fade beneath the weight of what he's already said. He takes a slow breath, eyes scanning the audience. There's no anger in his face, no gloating, just gravity. He looks across the room, past the lights, past the cameras, and finally speaks. His voice isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. Strength isn't how loud you yell. It's knowing when to walk away. The words float there, not shouted, not thrown. Just placed, deliberate, final. He turns. The audience rises in waves, some to cheer, some to protest, some just to witness. But Arnold doesn't react. He doesn't raise a hand, doesn't bow. He walks, each step deliberate, each movement stripped of performance. He doesn't rush. He doesn't look back. In the wings, Elena waits. Her arms are at her sides, eyes locked on him. She doesn't smile, doesn't nod, just turns as he passes and follows. No cue, no signal, like a soldier returning home. Jimmy is still standing, still frozen. The grin is gone. The charm, the ease, the polished polish, all stripped bare. What's left is just a man at a desk, watching something he never really understood walk away from him. The prop hand is still sitting on the desk, untouched. It looks smaller now. The band doesn't play. The lights don't flash. The music doesn't swell, just footsteps fading. Backstage, a stagehand tries to speak, then doesn't. Another leans forward to stop Arnold, then catches Elena's eye and backs off. No one dares interfere. In the control room, someone whispers, "Should we go to commercial?" The director shakes his head. Not yet. Outside the studio, phones are lighting up. Clips are already hitting the internet. Screenshots of Arnold standing, Jimmy shrinking. One caption reads, "He didn't storm off. He outgrew the room." Another, more quiet, more viral, simply says, "He didn't explode. He educated a nation in silence." Arnold reaches the door, pauses, turns his head slightly toward the curtain behind him, but doesn't look back. Then he's gone from the lights, gone from the stage, but not from the story. Inside, Jimmy exhales. He sits. The chair creaks too loud in the silence. He rubs his hands together, searching for something to say. "Well," he says, voice cracking, "that was something." A few laughs, thin, nervous, empty. The cameras pan back, wide shot, the desk, the stage, the audience still buzzing. But the focus, the weight, the memory, it's all already out the door. In the green room, Arnold picks up his coat, doesn't speak, doesn't rush. Elena opens the exit without a word. Outside, night has fallen. The street is quiet. A few fans wait by the alley, unsure if what they saw was real. Arnold steps into the night without fanfare. No cameras follow. No applause chases him, just the echo of truth in a world built on punchlines. He didn't just walk off a stage. He walked out of a system. And it felt like something cracked behind him. Not loud, just permanent. If you enjoyed this story, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories.